Another busy week in the NFL, which means we got plenty to talk about on this show. I'm Dustin. Welcome to Fantasy Smack Talk. As always, if you're not digging your fantasy teams anymore, they're down towards the bottom, you're looking for something else to get involved with, get on the daily leagues, go to FanDuel.com, FST2014, use our promo code, you get the same sign-up bonus that you'll see in all the commercials. Let's talk about some running backs. Denard Robinson's the first one. Only owning 60% of leagues. I get it. You weren't trusting him after his one good game. Well, now he's had two good games. The kid's legit. He's good. The Jags have no one else. He's going to keep being their guy as long as he can stay healthy. Charles Sims, we got to talk about him. Only owning 10% of leagues. Doug Martin's not getting it done. Bobby Rainey's more of a change of pace guy. Sims is going to get activated for them and could have an instant impact. Pick him up in all leagues just until we see what happens. Jonas Gray's a guy that's interesting, but he's a New England running back, so remember that. He had a lot of touches week 8. Who knows if that will continue, but he's still worth a gamble as an ad just to see if he does. I wouldn't be using the number 1 waiver on him. I wouldn't be using a ton of fab dollars on him, but he is worth a look. Anthony Dixon's worth a look in pretty much all leagues, I would say. Between him and Bryce Brown, you could obviously argue that Brown still has the higher ceiling, but you got to go with the guy touching the ball, and that's Dixon. He could be a decent short-term solution for you until Jackson comes back. Devontae Freeman, I want to talk about him real quick. Antone Smith got hurt. We'll see the severity of that injury, but if one of those guys gets thrown out of the mix for that crazy four-headed monster that Atlanta's got going on, it could really start to make this more of an interesting fantasy situation, especially if Steven Jackson goes down at some point. Still liking me some Devontae Freeman. Theo Riddick is interesting for Detroit, especially in PPR leagues. If Bush or Bell are hurt, which has happened a lot this year as far as one of those guys being out, Riddick's been interesting, and he definitely has value in PPR leagues. He's a guy you're going to want to keep an eye on, maybe add in deeper leagues. Allen Robinson I wanted to talk about, Jacksonville receiver. It's not always about being on a good offense to have fantasy value. They're playing from behind a lot. They're throwing a lot in the second half, and Robinson's been consistently involved in that offense. His numbers aren't going to blow you away, but they've been solid. John Brown, I want to talk about him with Arizona. This kid is electric. I'm sure you saw the long touchdown for them that ended up winning them the game. He's a guy that, you're definitely got to take the good with the bad. He's going to be a boomer bust type guy, but he's got to be on your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 radar. Martavis Bryant is another young player that's interesting with Pittsburgh. Obviously they got Brown, they got Wheaton, but Bryant's kind of carved himself a nice little spot on that offense. He's looked great over the last couple weeks, and Pittsburgh's offense has looked great. So I think he's worthy of a look in deeper leagues. A couple of quarterbacks for you. Michael Vick, we got to talk about him because of what he can do with his legs. Only owning 5% of leagues right now. They announced that he's going to be the starter. Geno Smith has been ineffective. The Jets' offense has looked terrible. Vic looked terrible in relief of Smith last week, but with what Vic can do with his legs, you got to think about picking him up. If he runs for 70 yards and throws for 200, that's a pretty good fantasy week. And then Kyle Orton. This guy has sparked that Bills offense. They have looked solid over the last couple weeks. Any type of 2-quarterback league, any type of deeper league where you need a little quarterback help, Kyle Orton could be your solution. That's weird just saying that. Jace Amaro, tight end for the Jets. This is a guy that's actually starting to get pretty interesting in the fantasy world as far as him being consistently involved in that offense. I think he's very much close to being on the tight end 1 radar. You don't really say that very often with rookie tight ends, but this is a guy that's having a really good year. Got a few pick up and play defenses for you. We got Cleveland, who's been solid this year, going up against Tampa Bay. I like that matchup. We got Kansas City going up against the Jets. Even if Vic does get things going, I'm sure there's going to be a few turnovers to go around. And then Cincinnati, it's their turn going up against Jacksonville, so the Bengals should be a nice play for you this week. And then one individual defensive player, it's time to start paying really close attention to Navarro Bowman news and see when he might come back. He had the knee surgery back in February, but he could be back at any time. If you're in any type of IDP league, he's a tackle monster and can definitely help your team. So this is just a portion of the list. If you want to see the full list, get on the website. I'm Dustin. Brent and I will be back later in the week.